Welcome back. Today we're digging into a stack of sources on a really specific AI challenge.
Yeah, it's about how AI systems, well, how they often stumble when you ask complex questions about data.
Right, not just simple stuff like total sales, but layered analysis. Think like, show me top products for new customers this quarter. They compare their value to last quarter's, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And the sources really point to why this is so hard. It's like the AI gets multiple instructions,
Right.
but it treats them like a shopping list, just separate items. It doesn't see how one instruction might depend on the result of another.
So it misses the connection, the flow between the parts of the question.
Precisely. They call it the intent hierarchy. It fails to grasp that, say, comparing lifetime value requires you first find the customer groups and then calculate their value. It just sees find customers, calculate value, compare as separate tasks.
Like giving directions to multiple spots in a huge mall, but using a flat map that doesn't show the different floors or the escalators you need to use between them.
That's a great analogy. It sees the destinations, but not the necessary path, the dependencies.
Okay, so what kind of like practical errors does this lead to? What goes wrong when the AI tries to answer?
Well, the sources highlight a few common failure modes. Sometimes it treats clearly linked steps as completely separate queries. It might figure out supplier revenue and it might try to figure out market share, but it doesn't connect that market share calculation needs that supplier revenue figure it just calculated, plus the total market size.
So it just calculates them independently and maybe gets the wrong market share.
Or can't calculate it at all. Another thing is, sometimes it tries to cram unrelated steps into one massive, confusing query that doesn't make sense.
Right.
And maybe the biggest issue for analysis, it often loses context, it forgets a filter you applied, or the result from step one when it moves to step two.
Okay, yeah, that supplier analysis example, one source detailed, really shows this. It was like revenue by supplier,
Mm-hmm.
then top customers for each supplier,
Right, dependent on the first step.
then product categories for those customers,
Another dependency.
then percentage of revenue from top customers, which needs the previous results,
Correct.
and finally market share, needing supplier revenue and total market data. A human analyst just does that step by step, naturally.
Yeah, because we see the dependencies. We know you can't get market share without the earlier numbers. Current AI just sees the list and often tries to do them out of order or, like you said, loses the results halfway through. It misses that analytical flow.
So if that's the problem, this failure to see how the pieces connect, what's the proposed fix? What are the sources pointing towards?
The main idea that seems to be emerging is something called intent graphs.
Intent graphs.
Yeah. Instead of that flat map, think of it as a graph or a flow chart. It explicitly maps out each part of your question and the relationships, the dependencies between them.
Okay, so it draws the connections.
Exactly. This lets the AI build a proper plan, figure out the right order to do things, and crucially, pass the results from one step, one node in the graph to the next one that needs it. It maintains the context.
So it's trying to mimic how a person would break down the problem.
That's the idea, to follow the logical flow of analysis.
And is this like a real thing people are building? Is there research happening?
Oh, definitely. There's research looking at similar concepts. You see work using graph-based frameworks to model these query relationships. Folks like Shin and others have papers on that.
Mm-hmm.
And others like Chang and Liu are exploring more hierarchical ways to break down complex queries. Plus, you have benchmarks like DABStep, which actually show how much current systems struggle with these multi-step analyses.
So the benchmarks confirm it's a real problem.
Absolutely. They highlight the need for better ways to handle this intent hierarchy.
Okay, so for you listening, if you've ever asked an AI tool a complex data question and gotten back something, well, confusing or just plain wrong.
This is probably why. That inability to track the dependencies between the parts of your question is a huge stumbling block right now.
It means AI isn't quite ready to be a fully independent data analyst for complex tasks.
Not yet. But approaches like these intent graphs are aiming directly at that problem. The goal is to give AI that reasoning ability, that understanding of analytical flow.
Which could unlock much deeper, more accurate insights down the line.
Exactly. Think about how much analysis relies on seeing those connections, ratios, segments, comparisons.
Right. So maybe the final thought is, consider just how much human insight comes from understanding why steps depend on each other. What new levels of understanding could we reach when AI can finally grasp that too?